I'm joking. But I didn't realize it was live. I thought it was a recording thing that you're going to put on Facebook or something. I'm serious. So I don't get the TWP on what time good? Oh.
You made everybody, it's because it's one person, so you made everybody have one lane. So she's coming to do it on the second.
Because I'm going to use my laptop instead. That's what actually made this this morning when I was in another meeting.
It's fine. There's a dark blue binder, like a folder, paper holder thing on my desk. Like, you know, like the one that you would use for an interview. I wanted to use that instead of this bright folder.
He's in the men's room.
They can just pause wherever they are.
So you didn't take much time after response. And someone is responsible, lengthy.
The real problem I'm having is that they changed the document I gave them. So I would basically give between 5 and 8 and watch their count, you know, for the, and I'll kind of cue you. I'll have a sense of it.
We can't slip in the first one when it's 3 minutes.
Having a bottle of water.
I think I see some right there, and there's more in the conference room. Do you know that the monitor is not on?
It should be on? Yeah, outside.
Yeah. I can't see anything on that monitor that I'm supposed to be reading. Yeah.
Yeah, man, there it is.
Oh, okay.
And that is first monitor. So, no.
Oh, let me just see how loud my voice is, because I've been in a... Whew. My name is Cavell Johnston, senior... Oh, Mr. Sharp says I'm to say good day.
Yes, and smile. First. Yes, sir, how are you?
All right. Good day.
You see
My name is Cavell Johnston, senior partner at TWP. At TWP Attorneys at Law. Thank you for joining me and our media partner, Jamaica News Network, across multiple media platforms today for a panel discussion on how to revive micro, small, and medium-sized businesses in COVID-19, turning losses into wins. MSMEs are at the epicenter of the COVID-19 crisis. But to use the words of Medusa the poet, let us smile at the obstacle, because indeed it is a bridge. Today, we have assembled a panel of business experts to show you how to cross that bridge and to pivot, which is the word for recovery on the lips of many strategists. We have with us Wayne Beecher, business consultant and president and CEO of Alt Catalyst. Latoya Fuller, chartered accountant and business consultant. Everald Dior, senior tax manager, JN Group. MSMEs have accounted for more than 97.6% of all classified and registered enterprises in Jamaica, but they often operate with little reserves and little contingency planning. Their recovery is integral to the survival and growth of the Jamaican economy. Wayne, please tell our listeners about who exactly qualifies as an MSME and what really is a startup, and how has COVID-19 affected these firms globally and locally?
Thanks, Cavell, for that question. And I think it's quite appropriate that you should frame the question in regards to those that are startups and those that are MSMEs. So MSMEs are what you'd be most familiar with. The mom and pop stores, the ice cream parlor, the barbershops, who set out to start a small business and to remain small. Often they are sole proprietors and they're not seeking to become a large corporation. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, a startup requires a different dynamics. Startups are driven by opportunity-based entrepreneurs who identify a market segment that they want to satisfy specific needs around. And so they pursue that with a lot of passion and vigor and ambition and dedication in order to create a global enterprise. They want to be world changers. Yes. And so even though they might start small, they might not remain small for too long. Their intent is always to scale the business. And so the business model is designed differently from the start.
So why were they so hard hit? Is it based on how they allocate their resources? Tell us.
So the two categories would have experienced different kind of experience during the COVID lockdown and the pandemic that ensues. So most of the small businesses who are engaged in high contact customer engagement would have seen their businesses take a hit from that. So businesses that surround the tourism industry, the entertainment industry, the barbershops and salons, hair salons, that requires high contact, would have seen an initial negative effect on their businesses. However, there are some businesses that might have seen a positive response. Those businesses in the retail trade, which account for about 60% of the MSMEs in Jamaica, yes, would have seen either a neutral or a positive effect on their businesses because they're providing basic goods and services for which the consumer needs still exist, even though they're in a lockdown. Delivery services would have seen a very positive response to this COVID crisis because a low-touch economy is what is now emerging, where persons might not be able to dine into a restaurant, but they might be able to have the food delivered to them, or any kind of retail goods or services delivered to them. So the delivery service would be doing great.
You mentioned a low-touch economy arriving out of this COVID-19 crisis. So what would be the elements of a basic recovery plan for those who would be hard hit?
All right, so let's frame it within a strategic scenario. So the best case scenario is that we experience what economists call a V-shaped recovery, where there's a sharp dip and then a quick recovery because control measures are very effective. And then you would be looking at a most likely scenario where we have an extended lockdown and extended social distancing, so the recovery is a little bit longer. They call it a U-shaped recovery. And in the worst case, we fail to control the pandemic, and so there's a sustained period of lockdown and further social distancing and so on and so forth. And in that case, they call it an L-shaped recovery. For small businesses and startup working in the best case scenario, if they have positive effect, if there's a positive effect on their business, there's an increased demand, the best thing is to ride it out and invest in their brand to establish themselves in the industry and to achieve some market penetration. If there's a best case, a most likely case scenario where there's a second wave, now is where they'd have to invest in a lot more innovation, do a lot more financial management to manage your resources in a responsible way. And then if it's an L-shaped recovery, some businesses might have to consider closing the business because there's no way they can sustain a business without customers coming in that would generate the necessary cash flow that allows them to cover their operating expenses. So, and it varies based on the industries that they're in. So small farmers who supply the hotels, and hotels might go into a protracted period of lockdown, they now need to find new markets and perhaps move away or pivot, as you indicated, away from being having a sole purchaser in the hotel chain and now look to create new channels to serve the customers directly.
Seems as if there are opportunities for partnership instead of doing just one thing as a solo enterprise. Perhaps you can be thinking of joint ventures with things that work. Could you just give us a little bit more insight on how people can group together, since just doing it by yourself may not really work in this environment?
Well, as I often say, an entrepreneurial endeavor is really an exercise in collaboration and partnership. No man is island, no man stands alone. And it's never good for man to be alone in any case. That's why God made him a helpmate. So if you look at a business as a system in and of itself, what you should really do is to create an ecosystem or support structure around that business. And so at the nucleus of that is the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur should be looking to partner with other entrepreneurs and with other more senior persons in their industries that they could bring on as an advisor in an advisory committee or in a board or a board of directors. In truth, most economies that have gone on to become world-leading economies have been formed around clusters. So you see some work coming out of Michael Porter's thesis, that's a Harvard Business School professor, that in his diamond model, that one of the key elements to a thriving ecosystem built around innovation and that can actually have an impact on the economy is to ensure that there are a cluster of like-minded businesses that compete in a positive way that allows them to do much better. And their supporting technologies and infrastructure and expertise actually cause the entire industry to grow.
But money becomes the biggest issue because you've got reduced customers and your bills are due, to put it mildly. So the MSMEs may have an instinct that we should perhaps borrow to get some of the things that you're saying done, even to enter into partnerships. How do we get money? And I know that you've been telling persons before you run to the bank, there are some things that you need to be thinking about and to look at how you can innovate and make sure you've got a marketable product before you incur any more liabilities. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay. Here's where a strategic mindset is required on this, whether it's a startup, a small business, a micro business. Because the first instinct is that, oh, my cash flow is running low, I have no customers. So what I'm going to do is to try to get a loan to cover that cash flow deficit. But if you think about it, a financial plan that requires debt really should be anchored around an investment decision to support the acquisition or the creation of new assets. Because all debt should be used to finance cash generating assets. And so unless you're going to use that financing, whatever debt or equity, to finance an asset that returns a positive net present value, i.e. free cash flow over time, you should not be seeking debt financing. If you take debt financing now and we end up in an L-shaped recovery, for example, so next 18 months to 3 years, there's no significant return to customers to your business. What you will end up with is a situation where you have a debt, you have an obligation for payment, and you can't meet those payments because there's no cash flow coming in from customer revenue to support that. If you have excess cash or if you are open to equity, I'd say reinvest that cash into the business and start to look at innovative ways to pivot your business towards the emerging economy that is likely to result following this pandemic. Otherwise, you should seek equity to invest in innovation or to expand to new markets or to invest in operating infrastructure, like a digital infrastructure, which allow you to operate better in the economy, which is to follow this.
Give us some examples.
All right, so for example, a retail store where on Duke Street, for example, where we're at, is now I've seen a fall off in their customers and they said they want to grow the business. They might not have had an e-commerce platform. I'm saying you don't have to just take that money to try and cover operating cash. Invest in an e-commerce infrastructure and build out a distribution network and have your products and services that you have in stock sold via online means and delivered to the door of your customers. Excellent,
excellent. But when we're looking at the landscape, there's a lot of lending offers out there. How do we sift and get an idea of which one, if any, would be right for our business? I know there's quite a bit.
Debt financing can be good and bad, because debt carries a leverage that you would not have otherwise, and it also allows for a tax shield, as our financial professionals would tell us, right? So if you can use debt strategically, do use it. But look for the debt option that gives you the best leverage, one, and it's more appropriately designed for your business. So if you're in a retail business and your asset base is around working capital and receivables, then you should find a receivable loans. I know the Exim Bank has a special facility for receivable financing and so on. So you could explore that. If you're in light manufacturing and you want to scale up businesses, you could look to one of the more softer loans that comes at the interest rate, south of 10%, to borrow from one of those facilities and then augment that with the DBJ's credit enhancement facility. What that credit enhancement facility does is to provide collateral for a major portion of the loan. I think it's 80%. And so the entrepreneur now only need to find 20% collateral.
Exactly.
Which kind of reduce the burden on the business. So it doesn't tie up all his business assets in an obligation to a debt.
Excellent. That's quite a bit to think about, but it is an instructive way forward, which is what we need. I also wanted to talk with you a little bit about advisory boards. Here at TWP, we advise persons on how to set up an advisory board that empowers management as well as directors. But some may think that boards are for large organizations. But I believe even if you're small, now is the time to think big and to govern yourself in a way that makes it easier to interface with the financial entities that support you and really can take you to where you want to be. So Wayne, tell us, when do you need to start thinking about an advisory board? What should you be looking for when you are shopping in the financial sector for assistance? What are the key governance indicators that they want to see before they decide to shop with you?
Absolutely. So we mentioned earlier about the distinction between startups and MSMEs. Certainly, most startups start with an advisory board because they recognize the value of extending the network beyond their own personal space. So what an advisory board does is to give you industry advice, because they need to understand the competitive forces within a particular industry, so that you can position your business more appropriately to serve, to find that gap and to serve the customer needs emerging. And then the network effect of those advisory board. Ideally should select advisors in and around the edges of the industry that you want to compete in, because they come with industry knowledge and networks that they could leverage to your benefit as well. So it's always advisable to select advisors and mentors to be a part of the network that you create when starting your business. And certainly, most financial institutions now will want to see some sort of governance structure in place, because that gives assurance that their interests might be protected by a robust governance framework.
Tell us a little bit more about getting ready to enter the junior stock market. What would be the requirements, and who knows when you're ready? How do you tell?
You're ready whenever you're ready. It's all a mindset game. So once you decide that you're going to move from small to startup to scale to a large organization, you should engage the stock exchange. And they have a facility there that can allow you, can assign you a mentor, someone to help you to get the corporate governance framework in place, and to help you grow your business. I know the junior exchange in particular, is targeted at small and micro and medium-sized businesses who decide that they're now going to seek equity as an alternative financing tool to grow their business. And so it's always advisable that they engage the stock exchange very early, and look at all the listing requirements. I know there's a cap to what you can raise. I think it's $500 million, and you have to have a governance structure in place, and they assign a mentor to help you to create that governance structure and to have it running effectively. And then, of course, you have to be willing to give up a stake in the business. So you're going to lose up to 20% or more stake in the business. And so you have to be willing to work with outside investors who will now become a part of your board and will guide the growth of the firm over time.
I think that's critical. You are giving up something, but you're gaining a lot.
Yes.
There's still some reluctance because, your business is dear to your heart, and some persons are reluctant to invite others inside in a decision-making capacity. How do you overcome that? What are the key things to think about?
It's a risk-reward scenario, and there are some cultural barriers to overcome. And this is probably the most salient point that I could make, and that the cultural and social barriers are probably the most challenging factors that keep a small business, small or micro business, micro. They have to know that if they want to grow, they have to be willing to step out of their comfort zone. There's a perception that if I give up some equity, somebody will control my business, or I don't trust this and that investors, and so on and so forth. It's a risk, not a financial risk, but more a reputational, cultural risk. But what are you going to get for that in terms of a reward? You're going to be getting access to capital that you would not be able to generate from your own business if you grew it organically. And you're going to get access to directors, board members who now can give you further access to new markets, new industry insight, new competitive insight, and able to build and grow your business over time. So if you're willing to take the risk of stepping out of your comfort zone and to trust and to build partnership and collaboration, you could be rewarded with a substantial amount of equity that could actually launch your business to new horizons.
Excellent. Latoya, and Wayne, I may have to return. If I get a little more time, I want to hear about some of the success stories of persons who have gone on the Junior Stock Exchange and more. But if I get a moment, I'll come back to you. Latoya, I know listeners are saying our sales are down, creditors are calling, our customers aren't necessarily responding. How do we manage our cash flow and how do we access credits?
Okay, Cabell. Sales are down, which means you're losing. And we're here talking about how do we win, right? So as Wayne pointed out earlier, winning means getting innovative with your business model. You're talking about going online, you're talking about adding delivery. So these are some of the key components that any SME should be thinking about at this point in time. Okay, cash is king, right? So if it is, we're talking about pivoting and we're talking about making sure that we are getting in the cash. How do we do that? So we're looking at our P&L and we're saying, what are we saying? We're saying revenue-centric spending. That's what we're saying, revenue-centric spending. So we're saying our pricing and volumes, we're playing with them to see how best can we get cash. We're saying our cost of goods. We're saying how can we negotiate with suppliers to get our items cheaper, possibly asking for discounts. Because what we're in search for now is cash. So we're saying operating expenses. Are we spending only what we need to spend? Are we spending on things that are generating revenue? So these are some of the things we're thinking of. These are some of the win-win solutions we're going after to ensure that cash is coming our way. When we look at our balance sheet, we're saying we have all this stock. We want to get rid of it. So maybe we have to be doing things like flash sales, generate cash coming in. You're getting on the phone, you're trying to motivate your receivables to come in. So you're having that conversation with your customers. Remember, as an entrepreneur now, cash is king. So we're trying to get in all that cash that we have sitting on our financials into our bank account. When we talk about we want to win at debt management,
yes.
Wayne pointed out so effectively that we're not taking on debt unless it is that debt is going to translate into an income generating asset. Okay, so in other words, we're not going after debt to necessarily handle the cash crisis that some persons find themselves in now that revenue is down. So, but we may have some existing debts and the banks may be calling. How do we handle that? One of the things we want to bear in mind is what we call the four walls of our business. Mm-hmm. So our four walls. So we start off, our staff gets paid first. So we have the staff, we deal with our suppliers secondly. We deal with our utilities and then we deal with our transportation. Once we get those out of the way, we start dealing with our debt, right? So we have the existing loans that need to be serviced. Once we've done those four, then we're into the debt servicing. Now, one of the things you may be thinking, boy, I can't afford to make all the payments.
Yes, so some persons may be thinking of debt consolidation.
That's correct, that's correct. So persons are thinking of debt consolidation and we want to say reconsider. Don't necessarily run into debt consolidation. Consider what we call Dave Ramsey's debt snowballing. And by debt snowballing, we're saying identify all those loans and all those bills and all those debts that you have to pay. Once you have that list, we're starting with the smaller ones. So what we're trying to do is to rid ourselves of the smaller debt. One debt down is one less person to deal with, one less creditor to deal with. So once it is we have that approach, the next step is to say, okay, once I've cleared the small loans and now I am now paying the minimum on the larger loans, then what do I do? Once the smaller loans are paid off, then you use those funds and start putting those funds towards the next smaller. And then before you know, you have most of your smaller loans out. It takes a little time, but through dedication, it works. And it's far better than consolidating your loans and restructuring them for a longer period at differing interest rate, at interest rate that may not be so best suited for the company. So these are some of the things we're seeing, revenue-centric spending in this time.
I am enjoying this information. It is totally a shift because some of the instinctive responses we're showing you this morning that in business you have to be armed with information and in fact you have to seek advice and guidance and that may encapsulate attorneys, financial planners, business strategists, accountants, and now I'll move to Mr. Dewar. Tax. Tax matters. Many people are afraid of the word tax. Tell us, from our conversations earlier when we were getting ready for this broadcast, you're saying keeping up with taxes is the best way to go. Face forward with taxes. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Good morning, Cabell, my co-panelists, viewers. In our discussion earlier, Cabell, I was saying to you that tax is not a normal state of affairs.
Yes.
It wasn't something that was handed down to us from Mount Sinai on a tablet. It's really the law. And like all laws, it must be obeyed. But it's because it's a natural state of affairs. Remember now, large, well-run organizations who have the resources employed well-paid person like Latoya to take care of these sort of things. But the small businessman, the medium-sized businessman, he's not so inclined in terms of, not because he's ignoring it, but right now he's trying to make up a payroll.
Yes.
He gets his payroll made up and he pays probably net.
Yes.
He's because the tax man is not one of the creditors. He don't see him as a normal creditor who's going to come down the next month and said, come pay me my money now. So he kind of put it off until it becomes a very critical thing. And if you go down to the Sutton Street Court, in one of those tax mornings when the court is in session, you see the problems that most small businesses have.
Is it because of penalties? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Right, so you keep putting off this thing and the tax man move very slow. So he might decide now to take some action against you probably 8 months down the line, probably years. And because it takes so long, penalties accrued, interest accrues. And it can be really frustrating. It can really, especially the small businesses who just see it as just this government or the taxman out to get me. But because of the...
So let me just go over the basics. So it would be GCT, your corporate or personal tax, PAYE or statutories, and your NIS, NHT, education tax. Tell me, what causes the problem? Is it that resources aren't allocated? What's causing the problem? Why are so many persons behind?
Great question. Remember now that GCT is a tax that small businesses sometimes end up paying the GCT for their customer. Because they are sometimes price takers. They are in a very highly competitive world and they sell the goods, they don't necessarily charge GCT, and that's a fact. But GCT has to be paid.
I see.
It has to be paid. So at the end of the next month, he has to calculate a GCT and pay it on behalf of his customers. With the other statutories, the fact that I pay my staff, pay the net, and also deduct is NIS and NHT, I must match it as an employer. So, a lot of times, it's cash flow issue comes in, and I get rid of, the staff pay, and I probably, do my thing, and I want to because the following month is going to be the GCT, the 15th, and the month 10 is going to be the statutories, and it's all caught up in which have priority. The cash flow, I need to pay my creditors who are down in my back, because if you are not bothering me, I'll put you off, And the government only comes in, or the taxpayer only comes in way down the line.
So you're saying that it's a discipline that you have to put those things as a priority, even though it's not one of the creditors coming down your door necessarily as urgently as someone you haven't paid for goods taken. You have to make it a priority and organize yourself around an accountant to have those things done. Tell me, what has the government done? Well, prior to COVID, let's start there. What was there to give a little lifeline, I would say, to SMEs?
Right. So before COVID, if you notice last year, 2019, there was a revision in the GCT threshold.
Yes.
Yes, it was 3 million, they increased it to 10 million. So right away, micro businesses don't have to consider, because the compliance or the filing of tax return, it can be really, really something.
Yes.
I think that's the issue. Compliance. And if you don't have the key person in your organization to deal with that, it can fall through the cracks. So before now, then they also removed the minimum business tax, which was a real nuisance, because it had nothing to do with profit. First of all, GCT had nothing to do with profit. Minimum business tax had nothing to do with profit. And another one that was a move prior to COVID was the asset tax for corporation. Nothing to do with earning profit, They are just there at a sort of tack-on tax. So with those three things move, then another big thing under the fiscal incentive, which come long before now, was the employment tax credit. It gives a credit to give businesses a breather. If you have payroll and you run those payroll and you pay it on time, you get a credit for right.
Excellent.
So that's before the COVID.
All right. Now we have COVID. What's the framework to support MSMEs?
Right. If you notice in the budget presentation, I think it came probably right when the pandemic hits. I think it was in March. But before even the pandemic hit, the government had announced, very important, a tax credit for micro, small, and medium-sized businesses of $375,000 to anybody who actually have employee running at that time. Everybody. Then when the COVID hit, they come with some more packages. And that $375,000, you must not be having a turnover of more than $500 million. That's 500,000 million. So we're talking about micro, small, and medium. We're not talking about the large fish. Then, as a COVID strategy, they bring in a one-off grant of $100,000 for anyone whose turnover is between 0 and 50 million. That's the COVID strategy. And of course, they're coming out of strategy for employees, what we call a care program. If you have employee during the time of COVID, didn't lay them off, you can get asset cash. And you can get for the tourist industry, you can get for other. So those are the strategies that they brought into play as part of the COVID assistance program.
Let's return a little bit to larger entities. Tax shield, we mentioned it earlier. How do companies structure their business to create a sort of a tax shield?
Tax shield. It's planning. That is a matter of planning. And of course, planning is really what we call avoidance. Not evasion now, because evasion is illegal. But the principle is that no man is entitled to structure his affairs in such a way to let the government take a big cut out of it. You can structure your business in a way so as to reduce the amount of liability. And of course, you know, some large organizations go through a lot of way out to do planning. We're talking about simple planning thing that, you know, we can talk about. I think Wayne mentioned about how God, how God,
how that reflects.
Yes.
Yes,
He said how God really created us to be together, wife and husband. So let's look at a situation in which Mary, she's my wife and she's doing well. I'm doing a consultant, but I'm not doing so well. But we are separate. If we could probably come together as a unit, probably a partnership, or probably a corporation, I can take the loss that I'm making and we can put them together. Because when you're making a loss, you're also losing a thing called a threshold. 1.5 million, which is a good thing. So that's some of the simple, but there are other strategic ways. I mean, if somebody is earning in the what you call the medium, which is over 400 something million, then that person might need to get some sort of strategic tax plan advice.
Yes.
Yeah, but you know, like a micro, you probably don't need it at that stage.
So tell us a little bit more about, we've touched on it earlier, but I want our listeners to say, okay, these are my key takeaways. If I didn't have my books in order and I feel a little overwhelmed, here's how I'm going to start to create a strategy that I can implement today when it comes to organizing my taxes. And I'm going to put that question to you, Latoya. So what would be your strategy to start with your outstanding tax liabilities? And will deferments come up? What are some of the things that we can do?
All right. I spoke about losses a short while ago. And I think the logo is that you can turn losses into win. Now, there's nothing to say that blessed is the man that make loss because he shall be comforted. But if you see where you have, because when you estimate, let me tell you now, you pay the current tax and you estimate the losses, you must estimate the taxes that you're going to be due to pay in 2020.
Yes.
And you pay that in quarterly installments. Now COVID comes in. Nobody know about COVID. Up to March, I knew nothing that COVID would have done this to the economy. But you have projected that you're going to be making this profit. Now, don't do it willy-nilly though, you know. You need to step back and see, have I projected I'm going to be making a profit, which when I look back, I'm really going to make a loss based on what I see happening to my business. You might want to see if you can revise your estimated payment and pay a smaller amount. So that's one of the things that you can start to do right away, as far as I'm concerned. And that will save cash flow. Because it makes no sense you keep paying. If you don't revise it, the liability is going to be there in the system.
Wow.
And you are going to be penalized for that. Right? So that you probably need to start to have a look at how is it that I'm going to be revising my cash, impact for going forward. And basically, persons who are no longer having a $10 million turnover should have been registered. They're going to be deregistered automatically for GCT.
I see, yes.
So once that 10 million is not there, you don't have that GCT compliance issue to deal with, because as I said, the compliance can be really something else for a small organization because there are a lot of taxes, right? Statutories, the GCT, and the corporation tax, and the personal income tax. That is a real task. It's not that the small businesses don't care, it's because of the nature of this thing, and you have to have the technical experts sometimes to navigate you through them.
Latoya, your strategy.
Yes, let me tell you, turning losses into wins is a numbers game, right? So as an SME, if you don't have your books in orders, you're going to be in a little problem. So what I would recommend today, for starting today, invest in a software. A simple software like QuickBooks will help. So invest in your accounting software, get your numbers. If you need managed services help, then you may need somebody to, may need a firm to support you. But it's a numbers game. You need to know how much you're making. You need to know how much you're spending so you can turn your losses into wins.
Wayne, I want to hear some good news, some success stories. Who's doing it right, locally and globally? Who can we look to?
Well, locally, there are some startups that you'd probably not consider startup because they're big, but they've only been around for a couple of years. So Cygnus, for example, that's a startup. Technically, it's only been around for less than 3 years. Yes. But those entrepreneurs, from this get-go, had a mindset that they're going to change the private credit market.
Yes.
And so they created a team of experts and support administrative persons who can deal with the financial and the tax obligation, and then look for an area in the market that was not well served, and they create a business model that can deliver value in that segment. So Cornerstone is another, startup, but they just started big in terms of their ambition and their goals, and they acquired a merchant bank and an investment house and so on. It's quite possible that they're going to be successful in the long run. Globally, we see a number of companies pivoting around the issue of creating technology to solve some of the low-touch issues. I know, for example, there's a company that has a software now to produce business cards. So persons don't want to take business cards because of the COVID challenge. And so now you can send a electronic business card or use a barcode to capture a business card, and so on and so forth. The emergence of e-commerce as a platform and on-demand delivery is also an area that is getting a lot of traction as well.
Excellent. I'm interested in food and the things that are the culturally strong, culturally identifiable in Jamaica, or food, or history, or resources. How do we start to think around those kinds of things when we re-energize our business? Because we don't just want to say, let's continue with the old. I believe there's some opportunities that's being created by this crisis. In fact, things that don't work are now exposed, and you have an opportunity to make them better. But there's some things that Jamaicans are known for, cooking or ability to use music to inspire. Any thoughts around that?
Well, let's put it this way. If you're going to be creating a business now, in this to be relevant in the post-COVID economy, you really need to be emphasizing on what I call market-creating innovations. So market-creating innovations revolves around creating a very competitive business that can solve the problem of the unserved masses. Yeah? So for example, in Jamaica now you have over 60% of the population living in informal settlements.
Yes.
And a similar number not having full financial inclusion, not having a full suite of financial services to actually get them to generate wealth over time. Same thing for internet access. We're talking about a digital economy, but a broadband internet access that allow persons to transact and educate and to be relevant in a digital economy is somewhere between 10 to 30% penetration, depending on the source that you refer to. So first thing you're going to look for a problem that is big enough for you to be relevant in, and you need to identify what's the customer pain that is being experienced in that space. And then now you create this company that can have the monopolistic advantage around 4 areas. One that you alluded to is around branding. So the essence of the Jamaican culture can actually support a strong brand.
Yes.
I don't think it would be fair to say that we have a brand Jamaica as yet, because it's not really delivering. It's not yet an asset that's delivering and real value for us in terms of wealth creation. So that's branding. The next is economics of scale. So a person said, but Jamaica is a small economy with under 3 million. How are you going to achieve economics of scale to be globally relevant? And that's the right response. You shouldn't create a market targeted for these 2.8 million persons alone. You should be trying to prove a business model here in this small market, but your intent from day one is to go global. So you have to start thinking and acting global from the very beginning. Next thing is network effect. You heard it said before, too large to fail and so on and so forth. But network effect is this new phenomenon now being facilitated by the ubiquity of internet and the access to social media globally. Yes. What you want to do is to create a community around your business, and you have the social platforms that allow you to do that. And what that would and Lotta and the tax expert will tell you that really what you're looking for is to creating a high switching cost for your customers by having them being a part of the customer community that surrounds your products or services. And then the final area the final factor that you need to consider when creating this competitive firm is around the use of technology.
Yes.
So technology is something that has long been ignored in the Jamaican small and micro landscape, but it's something that they can no longer ignore because whether or not they adopt or not, the global economy is going digital. So if you go digital, you have to use technology. And technology gives you a particular advantage because it gives you the ability to create that leverage and a platform for which economics of scale emerge. Because what you want through your community effect is to have a technology platform that allows you to acquire customers at the lowest cost point. So most of Facebook customers are acquired virally. It doesn't cost Facebook anything to acquire those customers, but the lifetime value of those customers are very high. They're getting advertisement, they're getting data analytics, they're getting so much value from the customers that it's perceived that they're acquired for free.
Yes.
And the customer themselves feel it's a free service that's offered to them. So, I mean, in this post-COVID world that is going to be digital, you have to think about leveraging all those essence about the brand of Jamaica and use that to build a community. So they're going to be targeting the diaspora. They're going to be targeting new markets that they didn't look at before, which prior to now would have been difficult to access. So I'm talking about the African continent. We all look at the United States, but the barrier for entry for a certain type of business is quite high to get into those markets. But Africa is over 1 billion people and it's the fastest growing economy projected up to 2030 with a very young population below the age of 34. So it's a very attractive market.
Yes.
And you can use the technology platform to actually engage customers there almost free of cost. Yeah. So you really have to start. One of the points I want to get out here is that you really have to start to shift the mindset of the micro business to become startup entrepreneurs, dynamic startup entrepreneurs who are looking for an opportunity to serve and to serve big. Yes? And so they have to leverage all the resources. And the strong brand essence, which is not yet a brand muscle, but the strong brand essence created by our music, our culture, our sports, or entertainment, or sport. These are things now we can craft a very compelling value proposition around and offer that along with whatever products or services we're trying to create.
Excellent, excellent. A lot to think about. Latoya, we've been talking about it's the right time for ideas to come to market, and Wayne has really helped with that to give us a framework. Financing them though, moving from idea to market. Take us through that.
Okay, moving from ideas to market. I like how Wayne has said Jamaica has a brand essence, but it doesn't have the brand muscle just yet. It's lovely. And, congratulating Buja on this recent thing. Now, I'm a Jamaican is the new song. So how do we move from an idea into business? And we have to, it's, as I said, it's a numbers game. So we are going to, you have an idea, you have a concept. How do you get that concept into making money for you? Now, it's about building systems, building a policy, having procedures, having a talent team that works for you. And how do you get all this done? You can opt for managed services because a lot of entrepreneurs are working in their business, and we want to graduate them to working on the business. Yes. So if it's possible to engage a firm to do the management of your business for you, your advisory board, your monthly management meetings, your need for financing, your financial control services. So entrepreneurs may not have all the professional know-how to run a business, but you may have that brilliant idea and a brilliant concept. So my recommendation, get a managed services firm to handle that aspect for you, and you focus on building out that business idea.
I like the idea of managed services because as a startup, and a small business, and we're trying to transition to what Wayne really says, moving from a micro mindset to dynamic startup and entrepreneur with all the elements put in a focus from early, so that when you go to present yourself to an official, you have your documentation, you've been mentored, there have been certain fiscal disciplines that you have been inculcating. But you can't do that and focus on the idea. Somewhere in it, the idea becomes lost, and it's almost as if the salt has lost the savor. So let's break out what are the key elements. You touched on it. You've got to have your policy and your procedures. You've got to have your financial construct in place. But what are some of the elements and some of the things that you may not consider initially, but could create a problem if you haven't put them in place?
Okay, so you're making reference to the cornerstones of a business operation,
yes,
right? And you have your big financial component, where a lot of SMEs are not. They don't have the level of literacy required to effectively run an organization, which is the reason why you find the absence of financial statements, the absence of financial records, and also that struggle to get the credit from the bank, right? So they are not financially sophisticated. So what you do, you are the expert with the idea. You know where you want to go. Employ somebody, get that professional to come in and serve you to help you build your own business. So the financial component being one cornerstone of the business. The other component, operational aspect of your business. The business needs to be operationalized. It is not, we need entrepreneurs to move from it's me and me only and probably one or two persons to identifying a team of talent to help to take the business on a day-to-day basis, the different things that need to be done daily, weekly, monthly, over the period to get your business to the level that you want to go. We talk about nurturing your customer as another of the cornerstones required. Wayne spoke and alluded to moving your brand from just essence into muscle work, where your brand and retaining your customers and deepening the relationships. All of those and having your sales in the pipeline, it's an art, and you may not, as an entrepreneur, have the kind of, you don't have the depth. You're just starting business, or you've been struggling for a couple of years, and you need to scale because you are confident in your idea. You need to employ the services of persons who can support that business as your thrust. So those are those three of the cornerstones that really required. You need people as well as a key cornerstone. A lot of entrepreneurs believe that they're doing it on their own. You need a team of persons to carry out the day-to-day activities, to position the business through business development and growth. So you can't do it on your own. No man is an island. God made you as a wife. You can't do it on your own. No way, no how.
I think everyone has started a theme here.
So it is very important that you engage the services of a professional and get the support required. And don't be afraid to give up that 20% share of your business. Entrepreneurs are so scared. You're not going to, I can tell you something. Once you come to TWP, they will help you in terms of your advisory board not to lose in terms of your shareholding for your company. But you need to take it to the next level.
Yes.
You have to get the support.
Exactly. Proper planning, proper documentation, seeking the services of an attorney,
That's
seeking
correct.
a financial planner, and
That's
of course, facing tax matters face forward and being diligent, knowing full well that if you can't meet your bills, it's a sign that something else is happening and you need to engage the professionals to do the necessary contractions or the enlargements, as it may very well be. You may need to partner with someone else. So it's a problem sign. And so
I tell you something, Kevin. Listen to it. Very, very good discussion. You can actually start out a business and the business outgrow itself, outgrow the experts that are no, yes. And you might start out small. You are now no longer micro. You are now medium. But you have people there that really, take for instance for tax, it's really about compliance. And it's really about knowing what you're about. The business has long time outgrow this particular person that you're using. I give you a joke. I know a business that was doing very well, and they have a gentleman that they were using. All he does is tell people that he used to go to school with the Prime Minister. And him no contacts. His contacts run this thing.
Yes.
And him not doing what the compliance want him to do, and the business was in a lot of problem.
And in fact, when you speak to accountants, they'll tell you that it's good to have someone who helps you to organize what has happened in the past, but you must also have an accountant who is a financial planner who can take you forward to where you need to be, which is a progressive mindset, a mindset of compliance, seeing opportunity in compliance rather than evasion.
And sometimes you get what you pay for, because you might be using this, as I said, this man thing that he was in school with the Prime Minister, and therefore him know it. And you pay him, and he doesn't do what he needs to do. But the person who you should be getting might be an expert who can actually take you through.
Right, and there are some experts that you will bring in, especially if you're about to make a capital improvement, or you're thinking about taking a loan, or going into a new market. And those persons will come, sit and keep a summit. Discuss with you and your legal team about the way forward. That's not necessarily a person that you have to have on your team full time.
No.
So sometimes there is an impression that everything is so costly. But the truth is that if you organize yourself early and be armed with information, there will be cost savings as a result.
Yes.
And Kevin, I wanted to chime in. You see that governance structure you alluded to earlier, where you need to have your monthly management meetings and your periodic board meetings, very crucial.
Indeed, indeed. I know that is Wayne's area.
No, there's a deeper implication to the point made in